Hello guys and welcome to my new video. So today I decided to cover the new legendary, basically because I got so many different questions about the Insignia of the Grand Army. How good is it? Should I start using it? I got it for free because it's a reward. It's a quest reward from beating Argus the Unmaker and Antorus. So basically a lot of people got this legendary because of how easy the normal is. So a lot of people have this legendary and they're wondering, is it good? I mean, it seems really hard to calculate. It doubles the strength of your tier 2 traits in your Netherlight Crucible. Tier 2 traits are the Shadow and Holy traits, things like Shadow Blind, Torment of the Weak, and there's a lot of different combinations. So it doubles the strength by 50%. It increases just the damage healing stats. It does not increase the procs per minute for traits that do rely on procs per minute. So that's a big important aspect as well. Before I cover the healing, the DPS and the tanks, and how good the legendary is for each of those roles, the overall consensus of the legendary is very average. It seems to be very average. For a lot of classes it's below average. The main reason for it to be used is basically because if you don't have the top tier legendaries for your class, it starts off as level 1000. Maybe you haven't upgraded 2 legendaries yet, which you probably should by the time now, but if you don't have 2 legendaries upgraded, it might become a decent option, but it's only for very niche scenarios. So let's look at the DPS. So I've spent a lot of time looking at the relic values for a lot of DPS classes, and for the majority of the classes, the best tiers or the best relics usually consist of things like Torment of the Weak, Shadow Blind. There's a difference between classes, but usually those are one of the best ones. Of course, some classes have different evaluations, but it's anywhere between 1.5 to 2% DPS increase per one trait. And that's being super generous. It's usually around 1.5% increase. I'm saying 2% just to account for some, just to be very generous. So we have to keep in mind, when you actually speccing into Netherlight Crucible, you can only pick 1 per relic. So you can have 1 Holy or Shadow trait in your first relic, 1 in your second relic, and 1 in your third relic. So you have 3 total Holy or Shadow traits available to you. So let's say you, first of all, if you have terrible traits in your Netherlight Crucible, in your artifact weapon, then this legendary is going to lose majority of its value and become one of the worst legendaries in the game. If you have, let's say for example, if you have like Torment of the Weak as a Frost Mage, which is simming anywhere around between 1.5%, let's say 2% increase. So you have 3 of those traits. Normal values for those would be, let's say maximum you get around 6% DPS increase from having 3 Torment of the Weak traits in your Netherlight Crucible. Now if you're using the legendary, you will get around a 3% increase from just the legendary. 3% is super generous. A more appropriate value would be somewhere around 2.3% increase in DPS from using Insignia of the Grand Army when you have your biz traits equipped on your Netherlight Crucible. So there is a huge amount of RNG, and even at the best case scenarios for a DPS, it is a maximum of 3% or around 2.3% increase in damage, which is very weak considering most other legendaries can give you anywhere from 5, sometimes even 10% increase. So this is a very average legendary for most DPS classes out there. Let's look at healers. So if you look at the healers, for most healers, Refractive Shell, which is the shield, is very strong. Light Speed, which gives you 500 haste, is very strong. Master of Shadows, which gives you 500 mastery, is also very strong. They sim very similar to what DPS are seeing. They can be anywhere from 1 to 2% increase in healing. Now the Refractive Shell will give you a shield on yourself, so that healing is basically only for yourself. But it's very similar to what like Pridus works. But either way, it's anywhere around from 1 to 2%. So again, max case scenario, normal, by having those traits you have 6% increase in healing. By having the Insignia of the Grand Army, you get a total of 3% increase in healing. By having the best traits equipped and using the new legendary, again 3% healing or somewhere around 2.5 is still very weak, putting it at like mid to bottom tier legendary for healers and DPS. Now For tanks, it's a lot more different. Because for tanks, they choose their tiers based on defensive, offensive capabilities. If you're like a Guardian Druid who's looking to increase like defensive capabilities or offensive capabilities, you choose different relics. Let's say, for example, if you're Guardian Druid, if you're looking to increase your single target DPS, Torment of the Weak seems really high for single target. I've seen it somewhere around between 3.5% DPS increase for a Guardian Druid using Torment of the Weak on a single target fight. Now that's mainly because tanks tend to do less DPS with less abilities, so some abilities are... So having a trait that contributes to your DPS tends to do more percentage increase. So in like a super niche scenario, if you're a Guardian Druid looking for a single target DPS increase and you have 3 Torments of the Weak relic points equipped, that should sim, or it really depends on the gear. I'm talking very general. That can sim up to like 10% increase in DPS. By using the legendary will contribute 5% increase in DPS for single target fight as a Guardian Druid. Now, you probably won't be looking for something like this. It's just really silly to specking into niche scenarios like this. And like I said, even if it does contribute around 5%, you need to have those traits equipped. And also, there's a lot better legendaries out there for like Guardian Druids that can contribute more DPS for single target and things like that. So even at niche scenarios, this legendary is still very average. And that's covering both healing, DPS, and tanking. In terms of stat values, the new ring Insignia Grand the Army is actually not that bad in terms of stats. Class ring at the moment, class rings usually give you the least amount of stats out of any of the other legendaries. Usually class rings for every class are very under budgeted. The new ring is a lot better than the class ring in terms of stat values, but that's it, stat values. But it's worse than things like Pridus. Pridus just gives you a massive amount of stats, and Pridus is valued higher than the new legendary ring in terms of stat value. So when should I be using Insignia of the Grand Army? If you don't have any legendaries. If you're like me on a Holy Paladin who has 4 legendaries and 3 of those legendaries are one of the worst legendaries you can get, like Agrama's Boots, which increases your movement speed, yeah, this might be a legitimate option to use. But if you do have all the legendaries for your classes, if you're a player that has all the legendaries for your classes, there's probably 0 chance you're gonna end up using this. If you have an alt who does not have all the best legendaries and might be very unlucky, you have to remember this starts off at item level 1000. Maybe you haven't updated all your legendaries. This might become an option. But overall, a very mid to low tier legendary. You should not be looking to use this unless if you fall into the situations that I mentioned before. But anyways, guys, hopefully this gave you a better understanding of how the legendary looks. If you want to have a look at how your relics compare, please go to your class discourse and check, or either go to Wowhead Relic Guide. It provides a decent information. Then you can see which traits are really good, and maybe it can be a decent legendary, but you need to know the trait values for your class. Overall, I'll give a pass for this legendary. Nothing special about this. Thank you for watching this guide, and I'll see you next time.